Merry Christmas. This summer, we took a bunch of our middle school teenagers here from Good Shepherd to Pittsburgh for a week-long work camp. And when we got there, our groups were split in two. One of our groups worked for a place called World Vision, which is spends a lot of time. A lot of their ministry is feeding the hungry of the world. And the other group helped in a neighborhood that had experienced extreme flooding. And that group helped clean up a lot of debris, and then they dry locked and repainted 3 basements, which was kind of grimy, hard work, but they did a good job with that. When you go on these experiences, you always get a free afternoon when you get 5 or 6 hours where you have a chance to do something in the local area. And we chose to take the kids downtown Pittsburgh, to the Duquesne Incline, which Philip's going to show you a picture of that in a second here. But it's this slow-moving trolley that goes up the side of the cliff. And that's been running since 1888. It's a historic landmark. But I'll tell you get on that thing, and it creaks and groans as it starts to make its way up the hillside. You can imagine the drama of a bunch of teens. They're like, "Oh, we're going to die!" But when you get to the top, they're at the top here in this photo, you get this magnificent view of the city. Every direction you look, you see these yellow bridges. You see the convergence of the 3 rivers, the Ohio, the Monongahela, and the Allegheny River. And of course, not in the picture, but if you look to the left from that view, you see Heinz Field. So if you're a Steeler fan, you have this spiritual experience. It's just it's good stuff. They say it's one of the top places in the world to view a city skyline. It's one of the best overlooks you'll ever see. This Christmas Eve, let me begin by asking you a simple question. What is an overlook? And you all know the answer. It's simple. It's a high place that you look down on things. Think of the high places that you've been in your life that gave you a fabulous view of something down below. Maybe you think of a view from an airplane or a hot air balloon ride, or maybe you've been to the top of the Washington Monument or the Eiffel Tower. Maybe you've climbed Sugarloaf Mountain or been to Harper's Ferry or some other place where your travels have taken you. Perhaps some of you have been to Rome. You know, the person in Rome 2,000 years ago who would have had a spectacular view would have been Caesar Augustus, the emperor, the supreme ruler. His home was on a place called Palatine Hill. It's where you get the word palace from. Caesar, he had the best spot in the city. He overlooked one side of the hill, he overlooked the Forum, the city of his day, which had the government buildings, the temples to gods, shops, monuments celebrating his grand victories, public baths. That was the one side of the hill. The other side of the hill was what's called the Circus Maximus. It was their mass entertainment venue that supposedly seated at 150,000 people. Some estimated it seated up to 250,000 people. But the masses would go there, and they would be delighted by public games, chariot races, concerts, and I kid you not, an occasional execution or two, just to reinforce who is in charge. And Caesar's always in charge. From every vantage point, though, every vantage point in that city, you literally looked up at Caesar's house that towered above you. In Caesar's day, he was viewed as God himself. And from Caesar's palace, everywhere he looked down on people. And I'm certain that that's the way he liked it. An overlook, as I've described, can certainly be a literal place, but there are also overlooks that are more than literal places. We often talk about taking the balcony view. The balcony view of things is an invitation to look at the world from a different perspective. The balcony is a place of meaning, of new insight. It's a place of reflection and conversation. Christmas every year invites us onto that balcony. Yesterday we had a special event here during the Sunday school hour for the kids at the church. It was called Passport to Bethlehem. A couple of years ago I remember preaching on that theme. The kids, though, they met various characters in the Christmas story. And one character you probably don't usually think about is a centurion. And my son Drew played the centurion. He came into the room and said to the kids, "I'm a centurion." And one of the kids asked, What's a centurion?" And Drew says, "Well, I'm a soldier for Caesar Augustus." And the kid said, "Who's Caesar Augustus?" And Drew said, "He's our great leader." Good question. And Kyle must have thought about it. I don't know what he was actually thinking, but he with perfect timing, Kyle asked, "Well, why should we listen to him?" Why should we listen to him? And if there was ever a balcony question, Kyle asked it right there. Why should we listen to the Caesars of the world? Caesar certainly tried to control and dominate and reinforce his worldview through strength and might. The Caesars of the world make decisions that benefit their cronies, their clan, their self-interest. The Caesars of the world want to see themselves as above you, superior to you, smarter than you, or in control of you. The Caesars of the world, from their grand overlooks, want to be waited on. They want to be wined and dined and have other people serve them continually. The Caesars of the world do not understand, though, what it means to be a servant. The Caesars of the world overlook people time and time again, which means they ignore people either deliberately or they're just never in a position to notice what's going on with average people in the world. The pain, the heartache, the hopes and dreams of countless people do not matter to Caesar. Caesar will always stand for Caesar and Caesar alone. We can see that from the vantage point of the balcony. And if there was ever a false narrative, a flawed worldview, I got to tell you, that is it. And we see it and we hear it in every generation. But the good news is this night we gather on the balcony and we hear a much, much more profound story, a much better story. It's a more powerful narrative of God's goodness and love and mercy, and that's what we believe in. The Christmas Gospel of Luke 2 is indeed majestic, and it elevates the birth of God's Son, Jesus. But Jesus is not in some high, disconnected, lofty place. We remember Christmas is about him coming down from on high and investing his life in this world and showing us the way life should be lived and the way we should treat other people. We recall with delight how he was born in a barn, a smelly, dirty, down-to-earth, messy place. Most of us have known that story our whole life. But let me just say, quite frankly, it's way more than just a footnote. It's way more than just a cute, kind of nice story. That setting of the first Christmas serves as a powerful prelude of what is going to come in Jesus' life. For Jesus, throughout his life, he continually showed up in people's lives in the messiness of their daily life and reminded them, quite frankly, you are not forgotten, I care for you, you matter to me, and let me help you in every way I can. So tonight, think about the list of people Jesus remembered, welcomed, and included. He did not overlook people like the poor, the lost, the lonely. He did not overlook lepers and those with deadly diseases. He did not overlook the dying, the demon-possessed, the people who were filled with great anxiety. He did not overlook the deeply religious people, and he certainly did not forget those who weren't religious. He included them all. He included women and children, not something others were prone to do 2,000 years ago. He reached out to people who were considered traitors. To the unethical, he said, hey, let's have lunch together and have a conversation on how your life might be different. He was always ready to connect and befriend people. And what I give thanks for is Jesus was always ready to serve. The night before Jesus died, one recalls something he did. It was something fitting for the way he lived his life. In that day and age, people traveled by foot. They likely walked with sandals or even walked barefoot. And you'd get very, very dusty. And common tradition was if someone showed up at your house, you would provide them with some water so they could wash their feet, kind of get refreshed. If you were a person of means, like a lot of the Montgomery County people, we would order a slave to do that for our friends. But in rare instances, you might actually wash the feet of someone you truly love, but it would always be someone that you considered your superior. On the night before Jesus died, Jesus, the Master, the Son of God, the one the disciples certainly looked up to, the one they called their master, got up from the table, took off his robe, grabbed a towel and basin, and washed the feet of these disciples. They were his students, still learning. They were flawed, messy, imperfect. They didn't have it all together. Yet Jesus washed their feet, taking the position of a slave, and said, "This is who I am. I identify as a servant. Now do as I do. This is how you show love to the world, by serving." You know, as we stand on the balcony this Christmas, perhaps you and I should give thanks and praise that Jesus lasers in his love on each of us. You are all deeply loved, noticed, and cared for by God. Those shepherds in the field this night so long ago, God's love lasered in on them, and they understood it. They experienced it, believed it, embraced it, and then it says they ran to serve. May you and I, may all of us do the same in the days to come. Last thing I'd want to say tonight is, remember, do not ever fear the challenges of this generation and this age. Remember, Jesus is also called Emmanuel, which means God is with us. So God will be with you. Now go and serve and connect and reach out boldly, especially to the people in your life who may feel forgotten. Go with confidence, knowing God is with you, and God will be there to empower your witness so that you can make a difference in people's lives. Amen.